Hi, my name is Ken Asselson. This is a quick review dealing with two posts I recently put up dealing with autism and bacteria which are associated with autism. And what my goal is to determine things which are statistically significant alterations which are common across people with autism. So it's very simple. There are studies out there and they find here and there and here. Now, where things have changed a little bit is because of the site microbiomeprescription.com. We have a growingly large number of samples. And as the number of samples increases and keep increasing, the ability to detect goes up. So that we can detect smaller and smaller shifts which are statistically significant, but they are relatively small, and thereby, small studies would not be reported, would not be seen, because they're not statistically significant. You get a good size sample of your reference or the control and people with the condition, and suddenly you hit a lot of interesting things. So here's example one of the blogs. Basically, it's a quick description. The thing which I ended up doing was pointing out where with your sample you can find the microbiome bacteria to handpick, keyword handpick. Then I give a list, and the lists are specific for the lab that does the processing, because that's what we're using for a reference. Lab biome site may report on a particular bacteria. 5 Ubiome and others may not report that bacteria. Or they use different criteria for saying, okay, this is a bifidobacterium. Oh, this is bifidobacterium. You take the same sample and you process it through the same digital sample, the same what's called a FASTQ file. You get different answers. No buts and no ands or ifs. So what we have to do is compare likes to likes. Samples which are processed for the same lab and what they're reporting, and then we can compare and identify statistical significance. Okay, so visualization there, the list of all the bacteria which are statistically significant, and they're a good long list, and in theory the bigger the samples become, the longer the list will be, because we can detect more weak relationships. And now once you see the list, you go through your own samples and you go and you see if it's there. The list here has been arranged or ordered to match the chart here, which means that you should be able to just go down to the first one, first couple of ones, and the first couple of ones are there. Intercoccus, gamma bacteria. Go down here and see if gamma bacteria is there. And now you have the gamma bacteria in Cetus, and you go up and you check the list, and nope, that one isn't listed there. The Cerata is, and what I've done is I've described the 2 layers above, so it's not from the beginning, it's just sort of so you can when you visually inspect it, you can spot where things are. And then in theory, what it would do is I'll check here, and then at the top of the page there's a button to make a custom selection, which now gives you something to do it. Before you make a custom selection, check this number because it's critical. Something may be statistically significant, but it may not be because there's more of it. Sometimes it's simply because it's reported more often, in which case what you want to do is have it reported less often. How do you have it reported less often? You get rid of it. You decrease it. However, the percentile you have compared to everybody else may be below 50%. The suggestion engine does not handle that at the moment. It may in time, but at the moment it doesn't handle that. So what you have to do is make sure that any ones which you check are 50 percentile or higher. It's because we're trying to reduce them, and the algorithm requires it to be above the 50th percentile. So basically, if you have it, but you are below the 50th percentile, there's nothing you can do at the moment. For getting suggestions, you just leave it. So that's basically the gotcha for using it. Now let's go over and look at where the data come from. Some of you may be interested. And basically I've created a private page where we can go and we can look at variety of symptoms, and we see how many people have done this particular symptom. Like autism, we have 200 people there. Oops, and let's go down to there. And now we have a lab, and there's 3 labs, Ubiome, Thrive, and Biosite. And the reason we have 3 labs is because with the 3 labs, we have enough samples to get results. So we go and we do Biosite, and if you click fetch data, wait a little bit, it says how many samples was observed. We have 66 samples which are marked as autism, and we have for our reference, which are people who do not have autism as a symptom, 1086, 1,000. Now, the catch is, some of those people may have autism, we don't know, but we are taking it as an aggregate, as a reference population of people who have not declared they have autism. Simple as that. Now, with that, we can now go and do some fun things. We can see how frequently a particular bacteria, here is a Bifidobacterium anguillum, and information of it. We have 200 people of the 1,000 who have it, and we have 33 people of our 66 who have it. Wait a minute, 33 out of 66, that's 50%. 200 out of over 1,000, that's 18%. In other words, it's 2.5 times more often seen in people with autism than people without autism. Doesn't mean it is by itself causing it. All it means is there's association there. And then over here we actually calculate out the z-score, and there's a link on the page to how we calculate the z-score, and it's basically old school Bernoulli mathematics. So we can go down here and we have all the things listed by the strongest down to the weakest, and I cut off with a z-score of about 5, which is, for most clinical studies, that would be almost, excuse my language, obscene. Most of the time they're happy to get 2. Here we are saying we're cutting it off at 5 because things are so good, and that's what is happening. Down at the bottom you get what is typically done, which is a shorter list. And in clinical studies, sometimes the list can be very short. And this is by comparing the means between the two of them, looking at the standard deviation and doing some fancy math. And then again, these are organized by z-score. The ones with the highest values are the ones which are most likely to be a critical influencer. Keyword is influencer. They influence the autism. They don't necessarily cause it or whatever, but they do influence it in terms of it being there. And we can take a look. Here we have, let's look at just order. Chronically, we have the average for people without symptoms be 327. People with symptoms is 3,267, almost 10 times more on average. Then we have the standard deviation, and we end up having to do a little bit of math, and we end up being able to do a calculation for the z-score is. And that gives us the list. And that's basically how we go about it. For this list, I didn't keep the cutoff at 5 back up here. I dropped it to 3, and the reason is that 5 ends up being a very small list, sometimes almost no list. 3 is still statistically obscene for significance. So that's basically how I get the list. Some are based on abnormal frequency and calculating it using Bernoulli's mathematics. Others are differences of mean, which again is done with standard statistical methods and getting a z-score. There's always, of course, the risk of a false detection rate. However, when you end up having z-scores in 6 or above, or even 3 and above, you tend not to be too concerned. Often, the false detection rate is a concern when your criteria is something like 1.6, or double that. And if you're concerned, then you just figure out how high you want to go and say, okay, no, up to this point of view is the thing, and take a look at numbers. Now, one thing I should point out is sometimes you get something up here with contradictory results here, which at first does not doesn't make sense, but actually does in a bizarre way, but it does jive. So don't be surprised if something down here has no symptoms being higher than with symptoms, and more frequent with symptoms than without symptoms. In general, if it is less frequent, then we usually will expect lower numbers, but that is not cast in stone. It's cast in pretty good asphalt, but not quite in stone. So that's basically it. So we have our blog post, which goes and spells out particular things, and the items which are concerned. So it's a matter of just selecting them and ticking and seeing what the suggestions are. The interesting thing here I find is that I find in a lot of kids with autism, the amount of bifidobacterium is sky high, and actually what we have here is we have a good list of what the bacteria are which are high. Again, all these are ones to be reduced, so please, please, no bifidobacterium probiotics for autistic kids. Just don't. It is a dumb suggestion, even though 101 people on the web, and including some medical professionals, would be advocating, oh, perhaps bifidobacterium probiotics would help. They won't. The problem is we have a massive overgrowth, not just of one, but of many species. Okay, I think I'll shut up here and get this up.